Back in 1990, I was about 19 years old. I was listening to a lot of metal music. I was mostly into glam and thrash. My favorite bands were everything from Metallica to Motley Crue. But the Black Crowes came out, and I was instantly drawn to their debut album, Shake Your Moneymaker. There's something about the singles that were very catchy. I liked the music, I liked the guitars, but they weren't a metal band. They were more of a blues revival band, which was something pretty unique around the time. There weren't a lot of bands like that were popular, but me as a metalhead, I was drawn to this album. So that's what I want to discuss in celebration of Shake Your Moneymaker's 35th anniversary and discuss how it appealed to metalheads. So here's the agenda for this video. Number one, a brief history of how they formed. Number two, discussing Shake Your Moneymaker. Number three, discussing the singles, Hard to Handle, She Talks to Angels, Jealous Again, and Twice as Hard, and why did this album appeal to metalheads. The Black Crowes were formed in Atlanta, Georgia in 1984. The band was formed by brothers Chris and Rich Robertson while they were attending Walton High School. But you might find it interesting that they originally had a different name inspired by a children's book. They were initially known as Mr. Crow's Garden. That name was inspired by Leonard Leslie Brooks' children's book, Johnny Crow's Garden. At first, they were trying to find their sound, influenced by local acts like REM, 1960s psychedelic pop, southern rock. They gradually shifted towards a revivalist style dedicated to 1970s era blues rock. In 1987, the Robson brothers created their first professional demo for A&M Records. Jeff Sullivan played drums on the first demo, while Steve Gorman played on subsequent demos and eventually joined Mr. Crow's Garden. The band played as a quartet in New York City clubs in 1988, but they soon would get their big break when they met someone a year later. In 1989, they met George Drakoulias, who assigned them to Deaf American. George Drakoulias, I think it's George Drakoulias, I'm probably mispronouncing it, but he introduced them to music like The Faces and Humble Pie. Then the band began covering songs by the Rolling Stones, and Rich started playing in open G tunings. This is when they changed their name to the Black Crowes. Now it's time to release their first studio album. Shake Your Moneymaker was their debut album, released on February 13, 1990. It's now celebrating 35 years. The album was released on Deaf American Recordings and produced by George Drakoulias. The album is named after the classic blues song written by Elmore James, a song that the band often played live, although it's not on this album. The recording sessions for Shake Your Moneymaker began in the summer of 1989 in Atlanta and Los Angeles. There are a few tracks on the album, such as Could Have Been So Blind and She Talks to Angel, that date back to the band's Mr. Crow's Garden era. The band also chose to record a cover of Otis Redding's Hard to Handle, which became their breakthrough single. I found this quite interesting because when I did my research, I didn't know it was a cover song. I remember I used to like the song a lot. So let's talk more about this particular song, Hard to Handle. Hard to Handle is a 1968 song written by Otis Redding, along with Al Bell and Alan Jones. Redding originally recorded it. It was released in 1968 as the B-side to Amen, shortly after Redding's death in 1967. The song is featured on the 1968 album, The Immortal Otis Redding. Redding's version reached number 38 on the Billboard R&B chart and number 51 on the pop chart. I am a man on the scene. I can give you what you want, but you got to go home with me. The song would later find a new audience over 20 years later. The Black Crowes covered this song on their 1990 debut album, the album in question. It was a big hit for them right out the gate. The song reached number 26 on the Billboard Hot 100. And they would eventually remix the song 30 years later. So there are two versions of the song, the original album version and a hit single remixed with a brass section overdubbed. And this new version is available on the 30th anniversary edition of Shake Your Moneymaker, which came out, I believe, 4 or 5 years ago. The album version was released as a single in the UK in August 1990 and issued in the US later that same year. The song peaked at number 45 in the UK singles chart. Following the success of She Talks to Angels, another single I will be talking about next, the song re-entered the Hot 100 and peaked at number 26 in August 1991. So that's pretty interesting because She Talks to Angels came out later. It was a big hit. And this song actually charted again. So that's pretty cool. And that last time, number 26, is actually their highest position on the chart. But the same month, the song was re-released in the UK and reached a new peak of number 39. Also interesting that the Black Crowes were not the first band to cover the song. The Grateful Dead performed Hard to Handle about 90 times from March 1969 through August 1971, with Pigpen, Ronald McKerman on lead vocals. It was subsequently performed only twice on December 30th and 31st, 1982, with Etta James taking vocals and support from Tower Power horns. But not only that, the song also appears on a cover of Tony Joe White's 1970 album, Tony Joe. In addition, British R&B rock band Snafu included the song on the 1975 album, All Funked Up, and performed it for the John Peel Show on September 4th, 1975. So as you can see, the song was very popular, but the Black Crowes brought it to a new audience. So there was another hit single, and that was She Talks to Angels. This was one of my favorite songs from the albums. I used to play it on a guitar. I learned it because it used that open G chord, or it's like an open tuning, and it was a pretty cool song to play because it was just strumming open chords and then playing a few licks. But I would say it's like their equivalent of the power ballad. It was this softer, acoustic-driven song, the 8th track in the album, and the 4th single released from the album in 1991. And the song is loosely based on a goth girl from Atlanta who was into heroin. Chris Robinson explained this in a 2010 webisode promoting the band's Crowology album. The song did very well, reached number 30 on the US Billboard Hot 100 and number 1 on the Billboard Album Rock Track chart. The song was originally written back when they called themselves Mr. Crow's Garden. There was another hit single. This one had a little bit of controversy, so let's talk about it. The song is Jealous Again, their debut single, and released as the lead single from the album in question. The song was written by Chris and Rich Robinson, music video directed by Pete Angelis, and the song was included in the Greatest Hits compilation, Greatest Hits 1990 to 1999, a tribute to a work in progress. In addition, an acoustic rendition of the song featured on Crowology. Jealous Again is also included on the Shake Your Moneymaker 30th Anniversary Edition. The song reached number 75 on the US Billboard Hot 100 and reached number 5 on the Billboard Album Rock Track chart. But there was some controversy that came many years later. On July 30th, 2008, the Black Crowes filed a lawsuit against country singer Gretchen Wilson, claiming that she infringed upon the copyright of the song Jealous Again. This suit included claims against her label, her publisher, and TNT, who was using the song in promotional commercials.
Tuesday, I get up before dawn.
The Black Crowes claimed that Wilson copied their hit when she recorded Work Hard, Play Harder. The lawsuit was settled out of court for an undisclosed sum. In the end, Chris and Rich Robinson were given songwriting credits on Work Hard, Play Harder. There was one more single, that was a song Twice as Hard. Released as a single in 1990, the song written by Chris Robinson and Rich Robinson. The music video directed by Pete Angelis was shot in 1990. And the video features the band playing the song at night in the mansion. The band is also shown having a daytime lunch during the guitar solo. In 1998, the song was performed on the Jules Holland Show with Kelly Jones of the Stereophonics. The song is also used in 2 movies, Mad Dog and Glory and Ladder 49. Now you may be wondering, why were metalheads drawn to this album? So I think the main reason was the blues rock sound. So the album, it differs from metal, but still contains hard rock elements. In addition, many genres, specifically metal genres, were influenced by the blues. For example, early heavy metal such as Black Sabbath and Budgie. Those are 2 bands that were essentially electric blues, played slow and heavy. So in general, heavy metal has its roots in blues rock. Not only that, but the first hard rock and metal bands were bands like Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, and the aforementioned Black Sabbath were heavily influenced by the British blues revival. Not only that, the British blues of the 60s were influenced by the rock and roll blues artists such as Chuck Berry, Ike Turner, and Little Richard. Then there was a shift from acoustic to electric blues, which broadened the genre's appeal. So we had artists like Stevie Ray Vaughan, another musician who was popular at the time. He infused traditional blues with this rock and roll. So I remember I had a lot of metal friends who were also into Stevie Ray Vaughan back then. I remember the albums In Step from 1989 and Family Style from 1990. I think a couple of my friends in college had those CDs and we used to listen to them. Unfortunately, Stevie died around that same time. It was on Monday, August 27, 1990. So that is all. The Black Crowes actually released an album last year that I reviewed. One of my favorite rock albums of the year. So if you want to see that review, I'll stick that one right here, and you can watch that one next. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Please give the video a like. Helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Please subscribe if you're not already. I do rock and metal reviews, rankings, and more. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.